Hey everyone, welcome to episode 59 of Swan Signal Live. Oh my God. I'm so excited. I'm so stoked. I'm so pumped coming off of the Bitcoin 2021 conference. The Swan Dome was absolutely lit. For those of you who were at the conference and stopped by the Swan Dome to hang out, we really appreciate it. It was a Bitcoin maximalist sort of shelling point at the conference, and it was so much fun. The energy was amazing. Got to meet so many amazing Bitcoiners that weekend. Didn't get to spend nearly enough time with almost everyone. Can't wait to do it again. We need to do this a lot more often. Swan Bitcoin is the best way to stack your freedom cash. Build your stash of freedom cash, as our CTO Jan Pritzker calls it. It is freedom money, and we are reminded of that more than ever today on an historic day for Bitcoin, an historic day for the world, that Bitcoin is freedom money. It is money that can be used to bring people into the financial system that have not have benefited or been privileged enough to be a part of it, like so many of us are. This is not just about number go up. This is not just about investing early in an asset that will become a global reserve currency, perhaps. It is not just about making money or seeing your purchasing power preserved or increased over time. This is about freedom. This is about justice. This is about privacy. And today, more than any other day in the history of Bitcoin, we are reminded of that. When I was at the Swan Dome, I heard maybe 5% of the time conversations about price. Bitcoiners are here for freedom. We're here for financial inclusion. We're here for justice. We're here for self-sovereignty. And we're here for empowerment. That was made clear over the weekend at the conference and is made clear now in the reactions to what's going on in El Salvador. I've got three people here today to discuss everything that's been going on, to give their takes, and talk about the incredible events of last night when President Bukele was on Twitter Spaces. And Alex Gladstein, one of our guests today, was up there on the panel asking him questions. We're going to hear from him. We're going to hear from Guy Swann, who's going to give us some fire takes that he is well known for, and Tomer Strolight, a longtime Bitcoiner who has come on the scene lately and written just a prolific amount, pouring out his thoughts about Bitcoin that he has gained over the years. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm going to bring in our guests today.
Hello.
All right. Gentlemen, welcome.
Yo.
Hey there.
What's up?
Good to see you guys.
What's up, everybody?
All right.
That's looking good. Like that hat.
Yes, sir. All right. This is, I'm pumped. How are you guys feeling?
It's a historic day. Just
Crazy.
blown away. I can't eat today. I'm so excited.
I've had
crazy.
very little sleep.
It's the last 12 hours have been so crazy, and especially that Twitter Spaces with like 20,000 people and the president just hanging out with us instead of like ostensibly doing whatever a president's supposed to do for like an hour. Like,
He's like,
this is the new normal.
I'm in the back here. I don't think anybody's gonna get mad at me for being left.
This is the new normal.
Nick kept asking, like, isn't there stuff you're supposed to be doing? And he's like, nah, it's cool. I'm with you guys. I'm with you guys.
Right.
From now on, every law that gets passed will have a room full of Bitcoiners making sure that it goes right.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I have no dollars left.
I want
I have no dollars
to,
left.
yeah, I don't either, except for what I need to pay my bills. All right. So I want to start with asking this question of the three of you, a little bit more specific than just how you feeling, but let's start with Guy. He's a Bitcoiner. He's been around for a long time, 2011, right? If I remember correctly.
Yep.
All right.
So a little over 10 years now. Kind of crazy.
10 years now he's been in this space.
Wow.
All right. So I think he's the most OG of any of us here. So Guy, please reflect on this moment. Talk to me about those early years, you and your brother, the small, very small community at that point, the insular community of Bitcoiners, maybe having conversations or grand dreams about Bitcoin's possibility. What does this moment mean to you? How are you feeling about it?
This is by far, or at least as clear as my memory is about it, which is not super clear. This is the biggest thing. This is the biggest move for what Bitcoin means, for the perception, the legitimacy. Like, what is Bitcoin in the global sphere? Like, we're done with this being a toy. Anybody who dismisses it at this point they're the stupid ones, you know, like they're the ones that are failing to see the writing on the wall. You could have made the argument in the reverse for a long time, and I've had to deal with that argument in the reverse for a long time. Now I don't have to. Like, now this is not and it's so funny. I shit you not, the first night we found Bitcoin, we were talking about the game theory and the inevitable. Like, I mean, we went as far into the future as we could project, right? This is a test of Austrian economic theory. This is an experiment of, does a digital hard money, does an incorruptible money, what happens when you introduce that into a land of nothing but political money, of nothing but soft money, nothing but corrupted money? And we talked about, like, one day there was going to be a country that made this legal tender, and it was going to just shake everything. Like, the whole foundation for all of it was just going to shudder a little bit. And we're going to realize that things are about to change in a big, big way. Somebody just said this is a legitimate world currency. The president of El Salvador. And yes, it's a small country. Yes, it's an undeveloped, like, it's a developing country, and they do not have access to the financial system. And people are complaining, those like bitching about, like, oh my God, it's, you know, they don't have freedom or whatever. And maybe and I can't, I'm no expert on this. I haven't followed El Salvador to any degree until this has happened. So I can't really comment on it. It's like, but, oh, supposedly the president's done really aggressive or totalitarian-ish things or whatever. And I was like, well, what better market? Like where else would you want it? Where else would you want Bitcoin adoption or legal tender to happen than explicitly in the places where it would help the most? You know, somebody said, oh, we would cheer, Bitcoiners would cheer if it was North Korea. Hell yeah. Hell yeah, I would cheer if it was North Korea. Who the hell needs it more than people in North Korea? You know, like, people who don't have any sort of freedom. Like, Bitcoin doesn't care. You know, Jack Mallard said it's one small step for Bitcoin. It's just another node. It's just some other, you know, some new wallets. Like, it brings the same sovereignty and independence to the people in North Korea and anywhere else as it does to somebody in the US. The people in the US don't need it. We don't really need Bitcoin. We're the ones benefiting from the petrodollar. It's explicitly the people in El Salvador who have no access to a bank account, and now will probably never have one. There will be a whole subset of that population that never knows what it's like to not be on an open source, permissionless global financial infrastructure and have a hard money that no one can take from them. That you don't go back. They don't, those people will never go back to business days. Those people will never go back to international transfer fees. They won't understand, what do you mean I can't just send this to you? What do you mean I don't own it? Like, this is huge. And it's crazy to think how far we've come. You know, like, I remember there was a big moment for me early on when it showed up on The Good Wife. I was in that episode of Good Wife, and that was a big deal because it was like, oh, this actually exists in the real world. This isn't just like this little weird corner of the internet. But today, or last night, being on with 20,000, 22,000 people in a Twitter Spaces chat with, in the last 48 hours, like, politicians all across Latin America going laser eyes, like the power and the pull of the Bitcoin culture on the social sphere, and the president of El Salvador chilling out with us, just talking about what's going on. As in a handful of hours, this went from a bill on their congressional floor to written in the law.
Alex, you are, sorry to cut you off there, guy.
No, yeah.
Alex, you've dedicated your life to human rights advocacy. You're, you know, if anybody watching doesn't know yet, you're Chief Strategy Officer of the Human Rights Foundation. I have seen you extremely impassioned, giving speeches all over the world about the importance of Bitcoin to human rights. One, so same question that I asked Guy, what does this mean to you if reflecting this moment? And two, you did tweet about the president of El Salvador having displayed authoritarian behavior. I'd like to hear more about what you mean by that. And does that make any difference in terms of like how huge this news is?
Yeah, lot to say here, folks. Really excited to be here. I want to just start with actually, Guy, I was listening to your wonderful voice yesterday, and I was listening to, I was doing a listen through Wittgenstein's Money, and it was so timely because, what if, right? Like what if, and, Alan's essay there, Alan Farrington's essay is about, what if a new money monetized, what would it look like? Well, this is what it would look like, right? That's what he's saying in his essay. And, what a more perfect day to revisit that idea, because this is what it would look like. You have your both narrative, but also just like objective truth of Bitcoin as a store of value, and as a digital gold and as an investment. And that's really this narrative that really came to the fore with, especially, kind of bootstrapped by Michael Saylor in the last year. And to be fair, by Elon and Tesla back in February. Okay. So everybody's talking about this like inflation hedge, this investment, this digital gold. I don't think, and that's where I think those of us like Guy who thought on day one, once he grasped it, he was like, okay, one day governments, right? One day. But the crazy part is, I think most of us thought it would be in that vein as digital gold, as an inflation hedge, as an asset for a balance sheet. I just don't know how many people were predicting a step function increase to the next level, which is payments. I don't think that people thought governments were going to be like the spark for that. And that's what's so crazy here. So now we're going right to medium of exchange. Okay. We're going right to payments, legal tender in a country powered by Lightning, powered by mobile apps, powered by infrastructure that this couldn't have happened 2 years ago, to be fair. It can happen now. And it's going to be absolutely catalyzed by that. I mean, the developer ecosystem in the mobile wallet community, in the Lightning community, is just going to get an influx of interest and in talent and funding from this one announcement, from this one, small step for El Salvador, but really giant leap for mankind. I mean, it is really, really crazy. So that's just my first reflection is we are watching the monetization of this asset / network continue, and we're watching this new money be born, and it's really amazing to be part of it. Second thing is, look, I mean, what's important to think about when it comes to the human rights piece is yes, we should criticize this guy for what he's done. I mean, just to give you two examples. I mean, last year he brought the military into the parliament to pass a law. I mean, imagine if Joe Biden did that. I mean, I don't think people would be so happy. And he just got rid of a couple Supreme Court justices. I know they were apparently very corrupt, but like same thing. Like, what if Biden was like, those two judges, very corrupt, let's get rid of them? I mean, it'd be a huge thing. Now, I know you can't compare the two countries, but that's just to give you an idea of like why people are concerned about this leader. But at the end of the day, guess what? He could have gone for China coin. He could have gone with Xi Jinping, who he's been getting close to. They could have rolled out a DCEP. They could have rolled out a central bank digital currency that completely stripped the power from the people. And guess what? They went with freedom money. They went with Bitcoin, which is just like, I cannot, it's very hard to believe, but it's true and it's happening. I think the other thing I want to say is that, back in the day, the last 20, 30, 40 years, when other countries wanted to like oppose the US, what did they do? I mean, they went with communism, man. And that was bad for human rights. Communism's the worst, right? Guess what? Now they're going to go with Bitcoin. And that's just incredible. Like just the switch there to like, okay, we're going to violently redistribute stuff in our country and like, lock people up in a prison versus we're going to give them financial freedom. What? Like that's the flip, right? Which deserves more reflection. And then, at the end of the day, look, no one again should be celebrating this guy. Particularly, I think we should just hold our judgment on him. You all seen in Bitcoin how fast our heroes can fall, right? So let's please reserve judgment on this guy. Let's be very excited for the people of El Salvador. But like, I'm going to cheer any kind of like, moment where a technology or a kind of like empowerment is brought to the people. I would have cheered when King John signed the Magna Carta, even though King John was not such a great guy. I would have cheered, when these like walls of communism fell. I would have cheered to in the last 10 years if I had a government that was censoring and had a firewall and decided to open up the internet. It doesn't mean we need to celebrate the leaders, but like we have to cheer these progressive forces that are happening. And this is just such an incredibly progressive force for these people. And then just the last thing I'll say is it's kind of funny that a couple months ago we were talking about, I wrote this huge piece in February for Quillette called, Government Stop Bitcoin, because everybody was like, oh my God, governments are going to ban Bitcoin. And I was like, no. Like actually game theory and incentives say more likely they'll adopt it. Guess what? Here we are. So those are my initial thoughts off the top, Brady. But it's just been a crazy day, and obviously, just being in that room with that Nick created with the president, with Jack Dorsey, and all those other people was just wild.
Yeah, it's something that is interesting too, just as a commentary on media. We don't need mainstream media to get these messages out. We don't need mainstream media to interview the president of El Salvador. We can do it ourselves, right? I mean, we can have Bitcoiners who are very well versed, who have written, very insightful pieces, thought about Bitcoin a lot, interview him directly on a forum like Twitter Spaces with 25,000 people watching, and then that just gets out beyond there. We can control the narrative, right?
It was crazy just to be like, hey man, have you guys thought about mining? And he's like,
yes.
He's like, actually, we have these volcanoes. Like we should totally mine Bitcoin there.
Volcano is the new meme. It is the next level of this.
Did you see
the point about the media thing? Like this is such a perfect example of the level of connection. Like his brother was there, and you heard like he turned up his volume when the vote was made and they were clapping while we were sitting in the room, like sitting in that chat room.
Yes,
like how redundant is the mainstream media?
Yes.
How completely useless and like.
No, they don't get it, guy. I'm like, look, I'm gonna do a lot of writing in the coming weeks probably, but like,
oh no, I have nothing to do.
Yeah, you'll have nothing to do probably. But I reached out to a friend of mine who works for the Washington Post, and I've known these people for 10 years through my job at HRF before I got into Bitcoin. And I'm like, are you guys going to cover this? And they're like, nah, just, not interesting to us. They're dinosaurs, man. Like, see you later.
Yes.
Right. Well, there's no fear in it, right? There's no panic to sell in the world is getting better and there's freedom money.
Who wants to get that from that?
Yeah. And I think, as this news gets out, it does get out super fast to all of us who care about Bitcoin and care about following this story. But I was on with my investment advisor this morning saying, oh my God, like let's move even more of it into Bitcoin. And he's like, well, the technicals are showing that it's kind of headed down and maybe going this way. It's like, the word doesn't get out. The rest of the world is focused on something different. They're focused on the fiat value of stocks and technical analysis and all this other stuff. So as exciting as this is to all of us, and as much as it is like finally something tremendous has happened, it's going to take some time for it to get out there. And as I was sharing my enthusiasm with lots of people, those people who aren't yet Bitcoiners were considerably less enthusiastic. They were like, oh, El Salvador, isn't that a country that violates a lot of human rights? Isn't it a bad thing? Aren't you forcing people to accept Bitcoin? And so I think that this is still going to take time to roll out and for everyone to appreciate its benefits. So, it's not priced in is maybe one thing to say about it, but it's not sunk in for a lot of people. There's a lot of people who today aren't aware of the story, aren't aware of its impact if they are aware of it. And it's just starting to get going. But kind of on the flip side is the 20,000 people who are on that Twitter Spaces and everyone who's listened to it since then who are Bitcoiners, our energy, our commitment, our conviction, our ideation about what's possible now has taken a leap forward. And like a few days ago before Jack Mallers' presentation, a lot of us were like, okay, well, how is it going to slowly creep in? Will more companies put it on their balance sheet? What's going to happen, with ones who may be taking it off? And now it's a whole different ball game, right? Like maybe my country as well can be persuaded. Maybe I can get together people in my country who can make the same kind of things. Because in El Salvador, this started with a few people on a beach. That's it. It's just a few people on a beach, and then as the technology matured and as they experimented with and figured it out, and that's what Bukele said yesterday on the speech. He said, it'd be. I've written down some of his quotes on my whiteboard here, but he said it all got started by those folks on the beach, and now it can demonstrate to the whole world, and Bitcoin can be a symbol in El Salvador to the rest of the world. And so I'm moved by this. I'm persuaded. I live in Canada, and we have our issues, and I'm just saying, like, if they can do it in El Salvador, for God's sake, we can absolutely do it here in Canada. It's a bit of a bigger lift, but it's working. And I've been so excited about Lightning Network this year. I spend my weekends when fees are low, just onboarding new plebs, right? It's like, yeah, I'll give you inbound liquidity. You put some outbound liquidity. And I knew deep down inside, we're building the basis for this to be global and everywhere. And it's such a thrill to see it happening with all this collaboration everywhere. So I don't have to go much longer on this observation of it. But it's like, not everyone sees it, but we see it, and we get to build it because we see it.
Brady, someone just brought to my attention. I didn't see that the president had just tweeted
right before we came on.
He has instructed the president of the state-owned geothermal electric company to put up a plan to offer facilities for Bitcoin mining with very cheap, 100% clean, 100% renewable, zero emissions energy from our volcanoes. This is going to evolve fast. I mean, with a giant photo of the smoldering crater, and I don't know what to say here, man.
So
I don't think
for context, for those of you watching on the Twitter Spaces last night, Alex asked the question, are you considering mining or supporting mining in the country? And he was like, well, we haven't really thought about that. But now that you mention it, we do have lots of geothermal energy from volcanoes, and we were going to put some legislation together to promote businesses to use that geothermal energy. But hey, maybe some businesses want to use mining. And the next day, here we go. This is why Alex has a volcano emoji in his name now on Twitter.
And
the sooner
Alex said in the thing as a kind of a backup to like what Tomer said, and like why this is such a huge deal too, is that like this is like we saw like gradual institutional adoption. Oh, we'll hear about a new treasure. Like the next big news was going to be like, oh, Apple put a little bit on their balance sheet or something, right? And this truly is like a step function change. This is this is a whole new realm that this has entered into at just a grueling pace. And all of these things, I mean, look what 72 hours ago, this wasn't even on the table. This was just kind of like a thing that might happen in the distant future. And today, within, how old is this tweet now? An hour to 2 hours or something of talking about putting in a plan for 100% clean, renewable Bitcoin mining on a volcano in El Salvador.
Well, and look, it could have been, I don't know, man, like there's different factors at work here. And everybody's like, well, this is very rushed. Things are moving really fast there. And it's kind of like, well, guess what? If they didn't, then the US and the IMF probably would have stopped it or tried to stop it, right? Yeah. So there's like a friction between like this like kind of brazen, very kind of strong mannish government and changing the world. Like, and again, this isn't like, hey, we're going to set up prison camps or something. Like, this is like, hey, we're going to like, and this isn't like, hey, we're going to create like a new digital currency that's like the government coin. No. They're like, we're going to push Bitcoin, and like, they're moving really fast. And it's like, kind of like, I don't know. It just seems like the right country to do it, or a similar country to that, like a small country, that isn't sort of a major regional player, but that needs a little spark. And what's really interesting is to think about is like how Bitcoin kind of feeds into, your brain in a way. Like this guy realized that like he probably talked about Bitcoin once, And then he saw what Jack Mallers was doing, and he's like, all right. And then all of a sudden he realized he was getting a lot of attention. He's like, oh my God, if I do this, I'm going to get really famous. And guess what? He's really famous. Like a week ago, nobody knew who this guy was outside of if you were El Salvadoran or was interested in Latin American politics. And he's like, he's going to be world famous for the rest of his life. Like this is what Bitcoin does to you, right? So then it latches into your brain, and now you're like, oh my God, I want to keep going, right? And it's like, it's kind of crazy to think about, like chemically what it does there. But you know, look, even if it is worst case and he's a thug and he just did it for narcissistic reasons, Bitcoin changes you, right? So maybe it changes him. Like we can't rule that out. Maybe he reforms a little bit and maybe he chills out with some of this like crazy stuff. We will wait and see. But I really regret the fact that so many people out there are just like, you know, filled with coke and salt and, oh no, this was the wrong time. And no, this was the right time. And this is how it's going to go, you know?
Yeah.
Good Lord. That's so crazy. You know, on that point, actually, like in the context of like, this is the country to do it. And like, this feels right from like getting a developing country. It's like the profound growth that could happen in such a short span of time because of exactly where they are in their development, exactly where they are positioned and or not positioned in an international banking and financial services sense. It's like, you know, setting up a new tower in a place in North Carolina that's not got great cell signal, it's not really going to do anything. It's not going to change anybody's life, you know. But setting up a cell tower in Africa where one person in the village has a cell phone and suddenly they know 3 days earlier than they ever would where the clean water is. Like that changes lives. That absolutely changes lives. And that's what we're talking about in the context of like Bitcoin and an open source financial system to be accessible to these people in El Salvador. That's my absolute favorite part about Jack Mallers' speech is he talks about, I can't remember the kid's name, but talking about my grandfather was a fisherman, my father was a fisherman, I was going to be a fisherman, you know, and he's like, I don't have these great things like you got a Chase bank account, you know, you got a savings account you can like invest in stocks and all this stuff. And he says, but I scan the same QR codes you do. He's never had a bank account, but he's got a Bitcoin wallet. He's never had a savings account, but he's got a hardware wallet. And like that just like hits me so hard that this is where real impact is made. This is the real value case. This isn't some bullshit DeFi. Someone's going to buy some casino chips and get 10% yield on some bullshit where the value of his house went up 10% this year anyway. Who cares? Who cares about those people? They don't need help. They don't need anything. They gamble on all the shit coins you want to gamble on, but they're not helping those people, the people that really need it. This is real infrastructure. This is a real expansion of an open source financial system that they can do independently. Like so many of these developing countries can now plug into this thing and operate without being under the thumb of the central bank, of the central banking and the international banking system that uses this as a political weapon to tell them what to do, to give them a loan, says as long as you spend it on this, this, and this. That's not freedom. That's not helping them. You're doing that for your benefit. That's the IMF trying to tell them what they're going to be doing, how they're going to develop their country, and what laws they're going to be put in place. Who wants that? Like that's not freedom. That's not independence. This is being able to plug into this. This is a little piece of something massive, and this could steamroll so quick.
Yeah,
I got someone a surprise guest to bring in. Sorry, Tomer, to cut you off.
No, that's cool.
We have Mike Peterson. We have Mike Peterson with us. Mike Peterson is basically the dude that's kind of wrangled everyone together in on Bitcoin Beach and really lit the match and got this thing going. What's up, Mike?
Wow.
Hey, Mike, you're muted. Maybe. Either that or you're very soft-spoken. Still can't hear you. Hit buttons. Just keep hitting stuff until it works.
Long time no see. Mike was on the Twitter Spaces last night with the president and everybody else.
He was also at the conference, and it was great. All right, Mike, we'll give you a second to figure that out. Sorry for the troubles. I know I sprung this on you at the last minute. No, I can't hear you yet. There is a settings button just below or in this restream thing, and maybe you can select the audio input there, and we'll see. Tomer, you were about to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, especially with Mike coming on, this Bitcoin just it goes in these step functions, and there were for so many years all these people who were just building the core technology and sticking to the principles and preventing hard forks, preventing compromises to the integrity of the system. And we had to have that war so we could get SegWit in so that we could launch Lightning Network. It took so much time to build Lightning Network, but we never compromised on the principles. And then it was there. And then folks like Mike started to build with it. And then other people see it. So we just, we keep climbing to a higher and higher rung and higher tier of what it is that's possible with Bitcoin. And now we've got Mike. So hopefully that was like, here he is. He's like one of the pioneers of the next wave of Bitcoin. That's
sorry. Can you guys hear me now? I'm in my car on my phone, so
that's cool.
we got you, man.
Sorry for the poor video and audio quality, but I wanted to hop in for a little bit.
It's actually not that bad. I appreciate you coming in, man. So yeah, like I was saying, Mike helped kickstart this whole thing in El Salvador. With Bitcoin Beach, building a circular economy there, really took off after. And I want you to tell us about that process and how long it took, and the help that you received from some of the locals in El Salvador to get this thing really built. And then how did Jack come into it? And we ended up here with the president passing proposing and passing a bill, and we have the first legal tender country for Bitcoin in the United States, in the world.
Yeah, so we started the Bitcoin Beach project under 2 years ago. The idea was to start the world's first Bitcoin circular economy, where Bitcoin was really being used like we feel it was made to be. And we never dreamed it would get this far so fast. We did always hope that the country would adopt it, and we've actually had several meetings with different governmental ministers, the Minister of the Economy, the Minister of Education, and the Minister of Tourism over the past 12 months, really pushing on them the potential of, if they are the first country that adopts it, the jobs that will flow in, the fact that they'll hold that for history. It'll put El Salvador on the map, and it will not just Bitcoin jobs, but any companies that want to be forward thinking and in the mix of where the innovation's happening, that they would want to move to El Salvador. And fortunately, we have an amazing local team. Jorge Valenzuela is our main guy there in El Sante, that have kind of led the charge. And I mean, really went from nobody had even heard of Bitcoin to, in 18 months, everybody is transacting in Bitcoin from this kind of shoestring bootstrapped project. So it's been a wild ride.
I wanted to ask, actually, if you don't mind me butting in, what have been the biggest challenges like right now? Is it literally the lack of smartphones? Like, is it cell signal? What are the biggest boots on the ground challenges that you've had for adopting this in your local area that we might be able to extrapolate out to the rest of the country? And then also, well, actually, I'll save my next thing. What's your perspective on that?
I mean, I think most people underestimate the penetration of smartphones, even in the poorest countries in the world. And so, yeah, there are definitely people that still don't have smartphones, but most families have at least one. Internet can be spotty at times, and that can make it challenging. A lot of times people have kind of prepaid internet plans. And so if they go to purchase something, they run out of internet, it can complicate the process. But those are all kind of minor inconveniences, nothing major that's gotten in the way. The biggest thing is just the bandwidth to get people understanding and up and running. And so we've been running, nonstop as more and more people become interested, just trying to get everybody up to speed.
How are people getting onboarded over there? What are they doing so that they can get access to Lightning?
So we worked with a company, Galloway Money. They helped us develop a Lightning wallet that kind of has a community multi-sig model where no one person holds the keys. That it is custodial, but it's a shared custodial where there's different members of the community that are holding the keys and have to agree whenever there's a funds transfer between the hot wallet and the cold storage.
Did you say Galloway?
Galois, yeah.
They're the
Boy,
ones that
Galois.
wrote the article on Lightning Network as a global payment infrastructure.
Exactly.
God, I love that piece. God, I
Nicholas,
love that
Nicholas
piece. He
Birthday.
broke that shit down. So yeah, Nicholas.
Yeah.
Oh God, that one's so good. Oh, that's awesome. I had no idea that was at the heart of all this.
So Nicholas actually brought his wife and infant daughter to El Salvador for, I think, like 6 weeks. They spent there.
Wow.
And he was
awesome.
watching how people were using the wallet and, you know, where they were like running into roadblocks. A lot of times there's disconnect between the engineers and the people who are using wallets and the kind of nitty gritty places in the world. So Nicholas came down and, you know, saw all the different roadblocks and patched things or made changes to the wallet. And so that's why it's so easy to use now.
That's so funny. That's such an interesting model too, because I've talked about this on the show, and there's a couple people who've written about like something similar. Is like as we bridge the gap from like this scaling of the protocol from kind of the large, like very limited on-chain to getting true Lightning, non-custodial Lightning into the hands of the users. One really brilliant interim move is the distribution of multisig, is to spread it out among 10 parties, 15 parties in different jurisdictions in kind of a middle trust model that can provide a service that isn't explicitly that centralized service that we're used to. A family, a neighborhood, a town can essentially establish their own microservice and build their own payment infrastructure for their community. And this is that's such a kind of fun example that like that's kind of what you're looking at here with Galois.
Yeah, that's kind of is their whole take on it. Like they want to be in that space, and they've actually recently just open sourced all the code, and so they want to make this available for other communities, whether they use the Bitcoin Beach wallet or stand up their own wallet based on the code. But that's definitely where they're going with it.
Mike, what's it been like to watch the Strike only launched a couple months ago, to watch that growth, and then the getting the attention of your community or the community that you're a part of, and Strike onto the attention of the government. But also, like, what does it say that the government is going to work with Jack Mallers to build the like the official app as opposed to some evil megacorp? Like, isn't that kind of interesting?
No, we love that, and we've been super thrilled that Jack and his team came down. I mean, they spent a significant amount of time in El Salvador, and as they were learning how people really are going to use the app, and them learning a lot. I think same thing. They kind of come from the development world, and so to actually be on the ground and watching how people use it, they were able to make adaptations to Strike. And I love the Strike model, especially for remittances. So it's been, that's been a huge plus to the project. And they also offered some incentives to people that signed up. I think they were surprised at how far a $5 incentive in El Salvador would go. So they really blew it out of the water as far as, some subscriber growth. And yeah, no, it's all been 100% positive. And it doesn't surprise me at all that the government is going to use the Strike underpinnings and use their systems, because the way they fluidly move back and forth between Bitcoin and dollars using the Lightning Network. And initially, people are still like to think and still like to price things in dollars, is what we found. Over time, they start to realize, we'd rather keep it in Bitcoin. But it's a perfect entry gateway. So I'm thrilled they're working with Strike.
What are the things they can do to help? Strike could do, for example, to make sure that the system remains as open as possible. Like, just knowing Jack's personal philosophy, it seems like they probably would always allow withdrawals to private wallets, to self-custody. I mean, what else do you see there as maybe being helpful? Because I know that I asked the president last night, and he said, I mean, who knows? He could be lying, but he said that they wouldn't be mandating the use of a government app, that any app could work. So, what are your thoughts on how to make sure this continues in a spirit of Bitcoin here, this adoption across the country?
I mean, obviously, we always want to be judicial and to call people out on things, but I don't think the government would choose to use Bitcoin if they really had some nefarious, designs on it. I mean, why would you use the most open network in the world?
No, you could use. I mean, they could use the China coin, right? They could use China coin or something else, right?
I mean, trust me, there's thousands of companies that would be willing to do whatever they wanted to have them use their such and such coin. So I think all this worry that they're going to corrupt Bitcoin, like, it just misses the point. Like, the fact that they're using Bitcoin should be signal to everybody that they really do want an open system. They want something that's interoperable. The reason they're providing a government wallet is just to provide something that's easy for people to access, to make sure that nobody can say that they don't have the ability to get on. So I don't think the government even wants to provide a government wallet. They're doing it just out of necessity, that this is something that will help the people. And so I think people are reading too much into that.
That does bring up an important part of the bill that Alex, you noted on Twitter, is somewhat overlooked. The idea, first of all, that all economic actors are required to accept Bitcoin as payment, but the corollary to that is that the government will provide whatever means are necessary to accept that payment, and they could receive that payment and have it converted to dollars immediately. So they're essentially receiving the payment as dollars, but the the customer would be paying in Bitcoin. So that's basically what Strike's model is. And they'll have some kind of like a fund. I can't remember, their development bank or something like that will have a fund, right, of $150 million to sort of facilitate the trading of the Bitcoin for people who don't want to accept it. So there was some, talk about whether or not that is, forcing people to accept Bitcoin really corresponds with the idea of an open source money or a free market money. But it seems like those two caveats sort of address that. What do you guys think about that?
It's just, here's the history we have in front of us. I mean, we don't get to choose the parallel universe. We have this one. This is the world we have, and this is what they're doing. And yeah, I mean, you can read the bill in a way that makes it seem like they're going to force people to do stuff, but I don't really get I think it's a little too nuanced for Twitter, but I don't get the idea, and I'm sure Mike can color this, but I don't get the idea that they want to do anything coercive here. I get from what I can understand, they're trying to like aggressively expand Bitcoin use in the country. They want to, like it says in the bill, they're going to like help train people and equip people who aren't able to access. And the bill says if you can't get it together, then you don't need to use it. But I mean, to me, it's like very clear that they're trying to expand and connect the population and not like, coercively restrain people. As Mike said, if that's what their goal was, they certainly wouldn't be using Bitcoin, right?
Well, yeah, and the other thing is sorry, I want to hear what Mike has to say this, but it's the point on a Blockstream being that they're working with Blockstream to set up satellite infrastructure, is they're specifically setting up an infrastructure and like kind of base layer tools and the connectivity devices that there's no track for, they're explicitly setting up something that has no center. Like, you just set up a satellite thing, you're giving them the infrastructure that puts them in full control of it. So if they don't want to use the government wallet, you're giving them all the tools they need to not use it. Like, I feel like if this was some sort of Trojan horse of like implementing control, this would be the exact opposite of the way you would want to actually lay out the infrastructure. They're trying to just make this available. I think they're just trying to bridge the gap for the people who don't have access or might not want to accept Bitcoin directly because they're uncomfortable with it and they don't know. It's like, okay, well, we'll just turn it into dollars for you. Sorry, Mike.
I 100% agree with that. And I think we need to look at the bigger picture. Like, tell me some other countries in the world where you're not legally required to use their national currency. I mean, that's what makes it legal tender. So they're just saying, hey, this is legal tender here, so everybody needs to accept it, just like every other country requires people to accept their national currency. I don't think it's anything nefarious or anything controlling. It's just common sense. Like, if something's the national currency, you have to use it.
Well, and it does sound like they're leaving the option open. So ultimately, everybody's choosing it, right? Ultimately, you have the choice. You're required to accept it, but you can choose to flip it you can choose to short it instantly by flipping into USD.
You have two national currencies that you can use. I mean, most people in the world only have one choice of a national currency that they have to take. Like Salvadorans now have two competing currencies, and so they can choose which one of those two. But I just think it makes sense. If something's your legal currency in the country, then businesses and government need to accept it, or else it's not your legal currency.
And then it's ultimately the choice of which one you want to keep, because the government's sitting there and sounding like it'll convert back and forth for you. So which one's going to continue to get better? Which one's going to continue to be more accepted worldwide? Which one's not going to inflate unpredictably? Which one can't be seized? I don't know. One of them. So I wonder which one people will choose when they understand
Gresham's law. We now have an A/B test, right? We have a live A/B test between dollars and Bitcoin.
Right, but so I guess what I was saying before is that this is the step function change between this mindset that I myself was in. I'm not sure about Guy, who's been thinking about this for a decade, but for a long time I was thinking that for the foreseeable future, it'd be Gresham's law, it'd be bad money drives out the good. We'd be spending our depreciating fiat and saving in Bitcoin generally, unless we had to, right? But here, this is one of these historic things that could actually change the game, where all of a sudden merchants want your Bitcoin, and you have to spend the Bitcoin you have to be part of the circular economy. Maybe they're offering a discount if you pay in Bitcoin. I mean, we're just gonna have to see how this unfolds, but has international implications. And all of a sudden, now you're starting to think and see this as Tier's law, which is more like good money drives out the bad. I mean, all that could that was something I may have thought was happening in the 2030s. All of us, or like 2 or 3 halvings from now, but you're watching it literally start to happen. It's crazy.
Well, so here's a quick question about Bukele's rule. Like he's saying you can accept Bitcoin and instantly convert it to USD. Does it work the other way around? Like if you accept USD, is there something to instantly convert it to Bitcoin? Probably not. Is my guess. So it's kind of this one
specifically. It was done in the first framing in the former relationship. I felt like.
Yeah. I mean, people are already doing that. They just send it from their Strike wallet to their Bitcoin Beach wallet or another Lightning wallet.
Yeah, that's a good point. Strike does that.
So it's that option already exists, but I think he's just giving the other as a default, because there will be people initially that think they don't want to take Bitcoin or are scared of it, and so he's saying, hey, you still have this option. And what we've seen is, over time they start to realize, wait, I should have kept it in Bitcoin because it would be worth more than it is now.
Yeah. What I was getting after with my question is have they suddenly made it in El Salvador really easy for people to convert their US dollars into Bitcoin? It's not easy in the US. It's not easy in Canada to convert your dollars into Bitcoin. There's all these hurdles and everything else. And it sounds like there may be a rail here that's just nationally endorsed and super simple. And it's not a central bank digital currency. It's a central bank conversion of some other country's currency to an open, uninflatable currency, to Bitcoin. So I'm just curious as to where this ends up going and how people are able to use it. Because if it does go both ways, people will say, okay, I'll sell you a coffee, you give me US dollars, and I'll convert that right into Bitcoin easily and cheaply. So I have no idea exactly what's going to play out here, but there's just all this interesting stuff.
That's already happening. You have businesses that, if they're taking payment in Strike, which is technically they're being paid in stablecoin, but they're choosing which wallet to receive it in, whether they want to receive it as stablecoin or whether they want to receive it as Bitcoin. So it'll be very easy for people to go both ways.
Wow. That's just a profound thing that I hadn't really appreciated, is if it's easy for people to acquire Bitcoin, because the biggest obstacle right now everywhere in the world is buying Bitcoin, right? It's you decide you want some, and then you have to go through all these hurdles and all these difficulties, and then you're lured by some other people into buying something other than Bitcoin as well. But this is so pure and clear. I can't wait to see how it plays out.
I think people are also underappreciating how advantageous it's going to become to businesses, especially small and medium-sized businesses, to be based in El Salvador. Because right now it's so hard to move money or to transact in the world internationally. And if you can move it all to Bitcoin, just as an example, we were buying a truck for the project, and somebody had donated the funds in the US, and we were trying to get it down to El Salvador. It took 2 weeks for us to get the wire down there and to finally clear, where in 6 months,
Jesus.
when that
Right.
car dealership's taking Bitcoin, I won't have to deal with the banks. We'll have to deal with
I know.
any of that. We'll go
I know.
in, we'll pick out the truck, and we'll buy it right on the spot. And they'll
Yeah.
have their Bitcoin in their wallet, and it'll be a done deal.
Well, those unbelievably long waits for wires aren't just in the underdeveloped and developing world. They're even in the first world. Banks are just really, really slow in dealing with international wires and cross-bank wires. And they don't trust each other. They don't have a trustless system.
It's true. Much of
Well,
the Swan
and I-
team can attest to that.
I think this is going to force them to rethink the whole KYC AML systems, because they're going to have to be competing with Bitcoin. And so they're going to have to become much more reasonable in the requirements they have, or else everybody's just going to switch to using Bitcoin. And so I think it's going to be good all around.
Right.
You know, I
well,
think-
listen, their systems are reasonable for what their systems are, which are trust-based systems where the money doesn't settle for a long time. What they need to do is adopt Lightning, right? And adopt Bitcoin. And then the banks can actually have 10, 15-minute settlement or instant settlement between this, the size of channels that are between them. And then this whole silly system that requires all this delay and all this trust and only operates when your bank is open and you have to go in person and you're not sure if it's going to get to the right person. Like, anyone who has to deal with that ever walks away and has seen Bitcoin walks away and says, wow, that's so primitive and so ancient and so awful an experience. So
Yeah,
we may
there's
be moving.
kind of an interesting allegory, because I'm really curious to see, like, I think watching this KYC AML stuff develop as time goes forward, it really is kind of a phenomenon or a problem that's kind of isolated to a permissioned, whitelisted financial system, right? Is that you have to vet everybody who is participating, and only those who are explicitly vetted can then play.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
so that's kind of the KYC AML issue. But when you have a permissionless system where the settlement is instant and the ownership is like, it's not a pull system, it's a push system, right? So you don't actually have that problem. I actually think this is probably a decent analogy to kind of follow to see how this might play out, and kind of the anger and the pushback that we might see. I think this is very similar to the BitTorrent and the copyright issue of, like, the new model simply does not fit the copyright infrastructure. And I think we're going to see 5 to 7 years of this battle out before it's pretty much apparent that the old KYC AML model just does not work. It will not hold up, and you're just going to lose so much. You're going to lose it one way or the other.
Yeah.
The question is, do you want to be participating in the new system, or do you simply want to be replaced? Same way with file sharing and
There
copyright.
could just also be this like hybrid system though, where it's like kind of like your strike. As far as I know, in El Salvador, you have to, don't you? You have, Mike. You have to give your like DUI, right? Your like national ID to set up a strike account, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you could have like your checking account might be light, KYC light,
Mhm.
but like your savings account is your sovereign private non-KYC savings account, right? That
Yeah.
you control, you can multi-sig and you can control your time and energy, but you have this like the incoming flow maybe comes through. Obviously you could always just have it go directly to your own, non-custodial wallet. But I think a lot of people end up using strike-based or similar products as kind of like their checking account. And then they'll have like, their own sovereign money as well. And we'll just have to see how that unfolds.
I think even though with those requirements, those are being pushed by the U.S. on strike. And so that's what I've seen being in El Salvador. It's really pernicious because the U.S. government pushes KYC and AML on developing countries in a much stricter form than they even are utilized in the U.S. And so when I'm in El Salvador, when I want to do a service contract for my vehicle for $500, I have to fill out all this paperwork and show them tax returns on where I got this money from. Where in the U.S., I have a business and I can move $100,000 without anybody blinking an eye. And so there really is two tiers of systems. But they're both pushed by the U.S. So the U.S. pushes a different set of rules on the rest of the world, and they make them afraid to like run afoul of them, because then they cut them off from the system, and that creates a huge amount of friction in the system. I mean, I've seen people that wanted to invest in El Salvador in the past that have just decided not to because it was too much of a pain to even get their money into El Salvador. So we're getting rid of all that. Like, I think the amount of industry that this unleashes is going to be like insane.
the flood is going to be crazy. The amount of investment, the amount of people who will go there to start building out infrastructure. I mean, just Jack Mallers said on stage, and I know this is kind of an exaggerated take on this because it obviously can't happen quite like this, but he said that they're onboarding 20,000 people a day.
I think they literally were onboarding 20,000 people a day. So,
but in a year,
that was
I'm talking about like in a year. My exaggeration would be that technically in a year you would have the whole country.
Yeah.
But obviously we're going to reach thresholds and saturation in which that would slow down. But that pace is unbelievable.
Just the network effects we didn't really talk about yet, but like obviously families, friends abroad, different countries. I mean, I met people, Mike, you're trying to do what you guys are doing in Guatemala, in Lebanon, and other countries. I mean, this is just going to spark so many curious ideas in humans to figure out how to liberate themselves and to push back against government restrictions. And all of a sudden you're now seeing the inevitable, which was as soon as they announced it, then we had this wave of other Latin American leaders all go laserized, right? And, we'll have to see how that turns out. But everywhere from Mexico to Argentina and everywhere in between, there were, all kinds of government officials at the parliament level, at the ministry level, saying, hey, we're gonna have an innovative position on Bitcoin too. And in the Twitter spaces last night, we had the Colombian kind of like innovation minister or whatever. And he's talking about how important Bitcoin is for his country and how we have all these Venezuelan refugees who don't have bank accounts, and that this is something they're going to prioritize. And that's a major country. Colombia is a major country. So we will see, but like this is not something where it's like a genie that you can just like, put back in the bottle. It's kind of out,
Definitely. Hey guys, just real quick, I just want to let you know, I have about 15 minutes and I got to run. So if you had any specific questions, I just wanted to throw that out there.
Is there anything that Bitcoiners outside of El Salvador can do to help out the project? Do you need anything from us?
I mean, we just want people to come down and experience it, to come down and spend their sats and to find places that they can plug in. I mean, there's always opportunities if you're willing to put your feet on the ground and spend some time there. So at this point, I would say that, and just continuing to get the word out that. Sure.
I guess if there's service businesses based in El Salvador that can provide their services internationally, and they accept Lightning, they accept Bitcoin. If someone wanted to put up a directory, I'd be certainly very happy to, without having to send my body.
That's a great idea, and we'll start to work on that. I mean, I think there's going to be just tons of opportunity that people start realizing once this thing gains speed. So we'll continue to throw things out when new opportunities come up.
I'll tell you, I'm willing to throw lots and lots of sats at anybody who can get me one of those newspapers.
I asked, unfortunately, I'm in California right now, but I asked my team, I told them to buy 500 today. I think we're going to, my idea is that we're going to auction them off or do something along with our fundraiser to build the surf training center that we're raising
sats that's a good idea.
So I'm going to try to get 500 copies and give them away for people who donate $100 worth of sats or something like that. So that's the goal at this point.
Hell yeah.
Private message me first before you make that public. I don't want to miss it.
All right.
It's auction. You just keep bidding more and more. That's incredible. So you made history, right? It's like, that's what's just so amazing. You guys made history by doing what you loved and believed in and what was possible with the technology.
It really is crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's totally insane. It still hasn't completely sunk in. Well, like Alex was saying, right? We had officials from obviously El Salvador, Paraguay, Panama, Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, all say
Tonga.
publicly either through their laser eyes or directly through tweets that they're into Bitcoin in some way or another. MicroStrategy came out and we all kind of thought, well, this is going to be the beginning of a big wave of corporate adoption, institutional adoption, et cetera. And we'd seen kind of a trickle since then. We haven't seen much. Do you guys think that this match that was lit in terms of the country level adoption might move a little bit faster? Do you think that there's like sort of more pressure on these countries not to miss out and to be amongst the first in this competition?
I think the benefits are much more to countries than they are to companies, because it's not just the financial, like having your assets in Bitcoin. It's all the jobs and the infrastructure companies and the positive press that comes along with it. And so I think when countries realize, wow, for very little investment and to do something that's in our people's long-term interests, we can get all these benefits that otherwise would be almost impossible. I think other people will definitely jump on the bandwagon. So I think it's really important that Bitcoiners, the Bitcoin related companies, really all throw their efforts behind this and make sure that El Salvador is successful. Because if they're successful, there's going to be nothing stopping it. But there are going to be a lot of powers that be that are going to want to see them fail in this, and that are going to be trying to throw, wrenches in the works. And so we have to make sure that we're there on the other side of that.
Yeah, this is going to need to be seen as good for people. Not, we had the G7 ministers all get together and agree that they'll have a minimum tax threshold for corporations. And so there's one group of thinking that just says, we got to make government bigger. We got to make government kind of this world government that treats everybody the same. But I think if we can get people really realizing that this is good for ordinary folks, this is good for the people who the banks can't or don't let in. This is good for people to be entrepreneurial, to actually to find work, to get jobs, to help money move. And there'll be the people who paint it as, well, that's a criminal activity for people to work without it being surveilled. But I think in countries wherever that can be seen as the right thing to do for the people, this thing will build up a momentum and a head of steam that will be hard for politicians to come in front of and say, this is terrible, right?
We also should we should also just mention the media narratives and how they change. I mean, I just got I have the blue FUD dice, but I also just got like the brand new orange FUD dice. So
quantum.
These are nice, but one of these is helps China. And it's amazing that we are so psychologically dependent on the media narratives. And it was about a month ago that was just China, and now nobody, or also the environment, which of course is just nowhere to be seen in the last week, as the media has just been focusing on ransomware and Bitcoin. So the FUD dice just changes every couple of weeks, and then everybody just blanks everything else out of their mind. And then we know it's coming back, but it's amazing that it looks like mining is going to be banned in Xinjiang, or has already been banned in Xinjiang. So this is it already got banned in Inner Mongolia. And this is so good for Bitcoin. It's so good for the environment. It's so good for human rights. That's a pretty major thing that's happening. And yet it's just nobody, we've got bigger fish to fry over here, but it's kind of amazing that
China keeps helping Bitcoin.
Fears, one of the biggest fears is now just kind of being forced out by a political decision by a communist nation, which is great for everybody else.
Yeah, I was going to say earlier on as well, we're witnessing, so China is shutting down dirty mining, which causes mining, it may cause a little bit less hash power short term. So what? We've got a difficulty adjustment. And it forces that mining equipment to find some other source of energy, which is cleaner. And now we take a look and we find out, El Salvador has all this clean volcanic energy. I'll tell you, I did a little bit of research. There's a tremendous amount of unutilized or wasted hydro energy throughout the whole world. In the 1950s and 40s, there was an enormous amount of hydro electricity capacity built, and it kind of operates and kind of gets underutilized massively. So if other governments start to wake up and start to want to get involved in mining, I can't tell you how much clean energy overcapacity actually really exists out there. You just Google hydroelectric dams and a map, you'll find sites with maps.
Apparently the volcanic, the curtailed volcanic energy in El Salvador is 600 something megawatts, which if they can use it all, I mean, that's going to make them a major player. So this is all just good for also just the decentralization of the Bitcoin network as well.
Yeah, that was the point I was trying to make, that I kind of wandered off, right? It's every country, and that's, China shuts it down and it can spill out into every country in the world that has stranded energy, which is, or wants to build new energy projects and find a way to pay for them. Green, green, green.
So Saylor, when he came out, actually really over the last 6 months. He argues that Bitcoin doesn't pose a threat to the dollar, saying that it's an asset, a store value asset. It's not really useful as a currency. And Bukele says, saying that, this is not an effort to de-dollarize. It's going to kind of live alongside Bitcoin in El Salvador. He also said something about how that this move would solve a lot of problems for the U.S. too. For instance, there's a more opportunity for people in El Salvador, would mean less pressure on the border for people wanting to emigrate to find higher paying jobs. So the U.S. should be happy about this. It seems like there's this, between those two examples, a concerted effort or like conscious effort to present these moves as not threatening to the dollar. Is this sort of the playbook that we're going to see from high profile CEOs and leaders of nation states as we sort of move Bitcoin, I guess, in what is we have to say? Maybe they have to say something different, but what we'd have to admit is really a competition against the dollar. Anybody can jump in on that one. Guy, you want to jump in on that one?
Guy, go ahead.
Okay. It's whether or not it's being, I don't know what the positioning here is. I don't know if Michael Saylor is trying to be politically correct here because we don't want to make an enemy out of the dollar. We don't want to make enemy out of the hegemonic power here. And I don't know if, and maybe Bukele is doing the same thing. But I think without a doubt, using this as, this is something actually what my talk was about at Bitcoin 2021 was how we will begin to interact with this before we go to the denomination phase. Is the second chapter of this Bitcoin thing is a medium of exchange. It's just like we saw with analog phones and all of the services and stuff that we used as things went digital, and the other services that we had. The first time that people really started to use and interact with the internet wasn't actually at the user level. It was when the infrastructure shifted and suddenly the phone quality was better. Suddenly there were no long distance calls because it was only analog to the local hub before it went to the internet, shot, across the country or to, some other continent, and then turn back into analog for the user at the other end. Bitcoin is about to become the settlement rail. It's about to become that thing between the person using dollars at, in North Carolina and the person receiving dollars in California. Bitcoin is going to fulfill a transfer. So they're going to use it without knowing they're going to use it. And this is exactly the sort of situation where, yes, there may even be push for use as denomination in a circular economy in a place like El Salvador, but they're building out exactly the infrastructure to make dollars move faster, to make fiat actually bounce from place to place in very short order, in very short time, with almost no fees. I mean, the Western Union business model is gone. It's gone. We just haven't built out the infrastructure yet to replace it.
Yeah. I think one of the great lines out there is watch what people do, not so much what they say. Michael Saylor's not hoarding dollars. He's shorting a lot of them. And he has been clear that he sees the dollar itself as kind of a melting ice cube of value. So it may be that dollars continue to get used extraordinarily, but in a melting ice cube sort of way. And Bitcoin is this accumulating and growing iceberg sort of thing in retrospect. So,
well, look, I was interviewed by Frank from the Block earlier today. I went on a show, and he was telling me that the panel that he did in Miami was with Novo, and I guess Novo said that once Bitcoin becomes a money, then it gets like a target on its back. So he was kind of speaking from this previous paradigm that I was describing earlier of digital gold. Hey, it's a safe investment. Hey, let's go convince the US government to make an ETF out of it. That's kind of like Wall Street's game here. That's what they want to do. They don't really want to deal with the cypherpunk values. They don't want to talk about that stuff. But you know what? It's inextricably connected, right? And all of a sudden now, again, you get this step function change in the payments and in the censorship resistant, kind of borderless, permissionless aspect of Bitcoin. You're going to see that be used more. And yeah, I mean, look, is it going to be a Silicon Valley moment where Americans and the American government realize that they can use this thing, as Guy was just describing, to upgrade their own money system in a way? or is it going to be like more adversarial? And I don't think we should rule that out. I think this summer could be really crazy. I mean, we have to be prepared for anything. I mean, as you said, Guy, this is no longer a toy. And I think we should expect, you know, as much regulatory reaction as we can imagine, but, you know, based on that.
Yeah,
Hey,
Bitcoin.
hey guys, I gotta
Bitcoin,
run. I want to thank you for having me on, and make sure you guys all come to visit us in El Salvador. So
We'll see you there, man.
Man.
What a pleasure to meet you, buddy. Amazing.
Yeah, man.
Great.
nice meeting you guys too. Thank
We're
you.
all so grateful.
Thanks for hopping in, Mike. Take care.
I just pick up on your comments, Alex. You know, Bitcoin's going to get attacked every which way, and it needs to. It needs to demonstrate that it can survive every single one of these attacks. So it's not like the game's not over. It's like, hey, we won, you know, we won another game, but the season, you know, the race to the World Cup's a long, long way away still. But bring on the next thing. Roll those FUD dice, and let's bring on the next attack, because it's what we have to face. But it's amazing to me, like, you know, Bitcoin just survives everything because it pursues every path that's possible simultaneously. And as long as one path is possible for success, that's all it absolutely needs. And so
what's really interesting is how fast one of the potential attack vectors can be routed around. That it's it can respond to, like the China FUD is such a great example.
A month ago that was dangerous, and now it's like, bring it on.
And it's like, oh, it just poof, you know, in a matter of weeks. And like that was, I mean, even Bitcoiners, I even talked about it myself, you know, like, no, that's at least a legitimate concern in some regard. You've got a lot of hash power in one jurisdiction. And it's like, well, now I don't really have to waste any time on that because Bitcoin fixes this.
It is just sort of fixing it in an unintentional way. And the weird part is, yeah, I mean, look, if you look at these FUD cycles, I mean, I don't know what happened, man, but last week was just like, it was unbelievable given that we had heard this incredible announcement. And I know that this is not priced in. Like, nobody understands this, like, in the mainstream. They're like, oh, El Salvador, something, Bitcoin, whatever. It's kind of like PayPal. Like, no one has any clue, like, that the game is just changed forever. Like, this is not priced in at all. But the crazy part is, it was all about the ransomware and the Colonial Pipeline, all this orchestrated, like, all these press releases and press conferences. Oh, like, like a lot of smart people, you know, look, you know, they haven't done all their homework yet, but let's just say smart, thoughtful people legitimately thought the US government hacked Bitcoin. Like, that's kind of where we were. And it's like, that's okay. We crashed all the way down. Nobody, like, you know, people just didn't understand. That was, you know, whether it was coincidence or not, whatever, don't want to get into that, but like, that was like, you know, right after the initial announcement. And maybe that was going to be that. But then they freaking actually passed the law. We have the 25,000 person Twitter Spaces. Now it's just like dominant again. And it's even more dominant than it was a few days ago. Now he's got volcano mining going. And it's like, it's just, yeah, we'll see. There's going to need to be a reactionary. It's sort of like the forces of physics. Like, there's going to be some sort of a reactionary
equal and opposite reaction.
That's going to be a big one. So we'll see what that is what it can't
Alex,
be the same.
I think,
it can't be Colonial Pipeline again. You know, it's got to be something.
I think you just came up with a new law of Bitcoin, which is for every milestone that Bitcoin reaches, an equal and opposite amount of FUD gets generated.
It's true.
What's funny is, like, this is, and I've talked about this, like, kind of when we entered this stage of kind of the game theory and the political game theory of this, is as these governments begin to realize just how important it is to have their own hash power and to be able to confirm their own transactions, is that I think the concept of energy independence that has been, it's such a political motivator of, like, we want to be able to have our own energy source. We don't want to be dependent on the Middle East or China or whatever it is for our energy sources. I think as, particularly if this, like, starts to steamroll in Latin America very heavily and the developing world, they are going to want to have hash independence. They're going to want to make sure that they have the ability to mine their own transactions, even if North America decides to censor anything of this subset or try to re-implement capital controls. As the Bitcoin becomes more and more important on their reserves, on their actual economic activity, the security infrastructure is going to require powerful amounts of hash power within their country, so they know that they aren't subservient. They're not waiting to make sure China doesn't kick them off or reorganize their blocks. And I think you're going to see the energy independence become a financial independence question.
Yeah.
Or
Is
just
our
or just
monetary
simply,
system safe from?
or more likely, just not include their transactions in blocks.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, I tried to hit on this in the humanitarian piece I did recently for Bitcoin Mag, but like, this is a way for countries to achieve energy independence. I mean, these folks have just massive amount of energy that's curtailed that they haven't been able to use with geothermal, and there's probably a lot more like hydro and other stuff that they've got there that's just sitting there. So
lots of nuclear too.
Yeah, well,
wherever there's nuclear, it gets turned down. Yeah,
right. Sorry, but just in El Salvador specifically, though,
sure.
like
Okay,
you know, and they now they have the opportunity to turn that into what is going to be the world reserve currency. So they don't need to go buy it, right, or like export goods to the U.S. to receive the world reserve currency, or in this case in El Salvador, sacrifice all of their monetary independence to become dollarized, right? Like that there are new things that countries can do, and it's sort of just wildly poetic that they can freaking forge this new currency in the fire of a volcano. It's pretty wild.
they need to name one of these volcanoes Mount Doom, right?
Forging the hardest money known to man in the fires of a volcano is just
one coin to
throw in the dollar, pull out a Bitcoin.
Incredible.
It's beautiful.
I need another Lord of the Rings meme for this one.
Yeah, dude, there you go. You got to add a little thing at the end of your video. It's going to take you 75 more hours.
Forged in the fires of El Salvador.
I want my Bitcoins to come straight out of that volcano. Where do I get those? I want Bitcoins forged in the fire. Right.
That's fantastic.
Item.
All right, gents. I think that's a good way to end it. on a good laugh. Fantastic, amazing day, historic. Thank you guys for sharing it with us today, and just hodl on and let's all enjoy this together. We're in this together. We've been, Guy, for God's sake, has been around for a decade now, so I'm so happy for him for hodling all these years. It's a reward, man. It's a reward.
Man.
It's a good
it's
reward.
funny because everybody's like, oh, like, why are you so happy the price is down? And we're like, you just don't get it.
It's not about the price.
This is not about the money.
God bless your time horizon, like 3 fucking hours. Like, Jesus Christ, get out of here. Please sell.
Look, this happens and it's still $35,000 a coin. We're stacking hard, all right? And this
is way crazier than 65K. This is
way crazy.
Far better.
Way crazier.
Far more bullish.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right. Thank you all so much. We'll talk to you guys
gents.
soon.
Thanks.
Take care.
Right. Take care, everyone.
Later, guys.
Later.
Woo! Wow. I'm a little speechless. Just take a moment to take a little breath here and take all this in. Like the guys just said, this is not about price. If you're wondering why we're all so happy, because we're down 50% or whatever, and why would you be happy? Well, like I said at the top, this is about freedom. It's about justice. It's about empowerment. It's about creating a world where our children and our children's children can live their lives without fear of oppression, without fear of being censored, with the ability to travel anywhere in the world and transact just as easily as you can from one country to the next country. And we're seeing the beginning of that happen right now. This is massive. This is a very historic moment. In 5 years, let's look back and see, how this played out. In a year, even, we're going to have a lot of evidence about how this A/B test is playing out. The dollar versus Bitcoin in El Salvador, and it seems by then, at least several other countries in Latin or South America, perhaps around the world and other places. And I think we're going to continue to see these smaller nations that have suffered at the brunt of, global Cantillon effect. Right, we have it in the United States. We know about how it benefits big banks and big corporations, and it, drifts down to the middle class and the lower classes, and it just really progressively screws people as you go down the economic ranks. Same thing's happening on an international level, and so El Salvador is one of those countries. There's over half of the world is in a similar situation, and as Mike was saying, Mike Peterson, who joined us, he's helped start the Bitcoin Beach and really get this ball rolling, was saying that this is this is what it's all about, right? It's about empowering these people and creating these circular economies and allowing these governments to kind of rise up and opt out of the financial system. And it's beautiful because this is what has happened too in the Western world, where people in advantaged countries, and the most advantaged country in terms economically speaking, monetarily speaking, is the United States. There's been a chance for us, as we always say, to front run the institutions, to front run the banks, because this is a freely available open source technology. Well, now we're seeing the smaller countries on the international level, and analog to that, starting to front run the bigger countries, right? Front run the United States, which has all of the advantage in terms of running the global currency. So this is beautiful to see. This is what Bitcoin's all about. And we should all be cheering, should all be extremely ecstatic. We're doing this together. This announcement coming at the end of Bitcoin 2021. Hats off to Mike Peterson, hats off to Jack Mallers, hats off to all the people in El Salvador that really put Bitcoin on the map down there, showed that it could work. Last night, President Bukele was talking about how, Bitcoin Beach was really responsible for allowing him to sell this legislation in his country. They gave him pictures and stories and just literally evidence that all of this could work. And so big props. It was awesome to have Mike hop in on the show. He's a hero here, and kind of an understated one. And so I was really glad he was able to get some time here today. So, stack your Freedom Cash, build your stash of Freedom Cash. All right, let's support what is happening here in El Salvador, what's going to be happening around the world. It's freedom money. If you're stacking Bitcoin, you're stacking freedom money, and that is helping this movement to help empower people all over the world. So you can do that at SwannBitcoin.com. Again, we are open internationally now. You can fund your account via international wire, which we know by experience can be a pain in the ass. The legacy financial system is a pain in the ass, and they're going to make you jump through some hoops to get your Bitcoin. But we can onboard you. We will work with you. We have an incredible team, customer service team, and onboarding team that will help you kind of overcome those KYC hurdles internationally and those wire transfer hurdles. We'll work with you directly. You can actually interact with an actual human being in a pretty quick way, unlike other major US exchanges. So come and join us at Swan. Start stacking. We'll be rolling out the full product suite as quickly as possible internationally. If you're in the US, you can sign up right now. 80% of our clients are stacking within 10 or 15 minutes of signing up. We have the fastest onboarding, we think, in the United States or around the world to start stacking sats, 5 to 10 minutes. KYC process is smooth. Most, like I said, 80% of clients are auto-approved. And you can start setting up your plan and smashing buy right away. So go to SwannBitcoin.com and get that set up. And yes, everyone's asking us, are we getting native apps, iOS app, Android app? Yes, that work is started. It's underway. We'll be dropping the iOS and Android apps at the same time. So that's going to be exciting as well. Lots of other fun things going on with the dev team working hard behind the scenes. And last but not least, Swan Private at SwannBitcoin.com/private for high net worth individuals and corporations. We have a sales team that is there to talk to you and teach you about Bitcoin and make help you get comfortable with making an investment and continue to be there after you're onboarded. We're not going to leave you hanging. You'll have access to the team. So SwannBitcoin.com/private. Thank you so much, everyone. This will be dropping on the podcast feed pretty soon. Smash that like button, hit subscribe. Hit that notification button. We're putting out, great Bitcoin content all the time on this channel. So I hope you'll join us and see you next time.